The weight. He appeared to be a lean puppy, perhaps 8 weeks old. Mostly boxer, but easily distinguishable from various other breeds because to their brindle hue. He put on the puppy charm, wagging his dock tail and making his way to the front of the cage when he noticed the woman staring at him through the bars. In the hopes that this would be her lucky break to secure a forever home, the woman reached inside the cage and the dog licked her palm. The dog knew he was headed in the correct direction by the expression on the woman's face. He licked more vigorously and wagged his tail more. Tears were starting to gather at the inner corners of the woman's opened eyes. She looked over at the man who was knelt behind her. "This guy?" "Yeah," she replied. The puppy could almost sense the skepticism in his voice as he asked, "And you're going to be the one to feed it, walk it, and take care of it?" "Well, yeah, he's going to be my little buddy, follow me around, protect me and all that," she added. He did not bother to hide the rolling of his eyes. She'd made similar vows in the past, and nearly each time, he ended up taking on the burden of whatever it was she desired. A garden, dinner preparation, a correspondence with a Nigerian 6th grader, a lot of things. Even though he truly didn't want to care for a puppy, what could he say? For the people you care about, you do what you do. Bryce England said to the man at the animal shelter, "Okay, we'll take Big Eyes," staring at her there in the cage. "Wrap him up and put a bow on him." The shelter employee remarked, "You can't take him home today. He needs to get neutered first. We can have that done tomorrow, and if all goes well, you can take him home the day after that." Vera England addressed the man, Hank, and he looked at her bewildered. "We'll take Hank home the day after that." From a scrawny puppy, the animal developed into a very large dog. For the first 3 weeks, Vera was in charge of the animal. After that, Bryce took on more and more responsibility. The dog gradually grew more loyal to Bryce as he took on the dog's care. He still thought Vera was cute, but dogs are even more straightforward than people. Their first loyalty is to the person who provides for them. When he brought up her pledge to look after the dog, she remarked, "See, you should be the one to take care of him. He likes you best, one day." "He likes me best because I am the one who takes care of him," Bryce snarked. Dogs are simple that way. You women, on the other hand. Vera could see where this was headed. She pushed out her large chest in her tight pink top and fluttered her eyes at her 10-year marriage. Bryce drooled on the spot, almost. "It's so simple, men," she thought to herself. Vera was aware that she was the more complex partner in the partnership. She was aware that the situation would not get any easier anytime soon and that her spouse wasn't deserving of the suffering that lay ahead. Recently, Vera and Bryce celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary. Bryce believed he was in a wonderful marriage to his perfect bride. Although the couple did occasionally dispute, it was never over anything significant. Vera was a White Sox fan, and he was a Cubs fan. He reasoned that was pretty much the major item to argue about. He was mistaken in his thinking. Vera worked for a multinational insurance company as an assistant vice president. She has spent the last 6 of her 9 years at WorldX working directly under Anand Patel. In addition to their working collaboration, the two had grown close friends. Even outside of the business, Vera and Bryce had spent time with Anand and his spouse. It was a man Bryce liked. Vera and Anand were just friends and coworkers for 3 years. She considered her supervisor to be attractive, kind, and approachable. His wide brown eyes and salt and pepper black and gray hair complemented his 45-year-old athletic physique. His light brown skin was a result of his Indian ancestry, and his education in Britain gave him a stereotypical upper-class British accent. His baritone voice had given him a honey-tongued, even attorney-like speech. Vera had never considered luring Bryce into an affair. Her husband's light brown hair and large, expressive blue eyes made him seem just as gorgeous as her employer. He looked it, having spent several nights at the gym. Being quiet and considerate, he embodied the qualities of a certified public accountant to the letter. Vera recognized that although he wasn't very skilled in social situations, his love for her knew no limits. He was also a pretty good bedsider. Every now and again Vera and Anand would go out to lunch and discuss business. Eventually, that turned into a conversation about their personal lives. The two didn't go out to lunch together for personal reasons for a number of years. That soon turned into the standard. Anand was not a serial skirt chaser, but he was aware that women found him attractive. In his marriage, he had only strayed twice before. There were no plans for him and Vera's friendship to grow. Up till it did. The two ended up sharing a long lunch hour in bed at a hotel approximately 6 months after the personal meals began. It astonished Vera that after her initial contact with Anand, she wasn't overcome with guilt. That first time, the two made love twice and had a great time doing it. They didn't do anything she hadn't done with Bryce before, but it was exciting because it was her first time sleeping with someone other than her spouse in a decade. The woman's neediness made Anand smile to himself. Her enormous body was undoubtedly beautiful, and she had a gorgeous, fit physique. A week passed before the couple's second tryst. They both felt it was just as nice, if not better, than the first as they were getting to know each other's bodies and preferences. The bonding turned into a weekly event that frequently involved switching up the days of the week to elude Bryce's notice. Vera kept things organized with her exceptional managerial abilities. Although she was constantly worried that her husband would find out, after a few weeks she started to find it funny that she could keep the affair hidden from him for so long. She believed she was better than her naive spouse and, in all honesty, smarter. Vera never fooled herself into thinking she wasn't having an affair. She believed, however, that it didn't require a single ounce of affection from her spouse. Rather, she felt energized in her life and marriage. She was blessed with both her husbands and her romantic relationship. She understood that her feelings for Anand went much beyond ordinary passion, even though she didn't love him the same way she loved Bryce. Vera made careful to remain committed to Bryce and to provide him with all the lust and love he appeared to require. She believed, if anything, that she and her husband were maybe closer than they had ever been, and she would know for sure if he had any idea what was going on. She was still under some pressure, though, to keep her two life apart. Vera and her lover didn't have a lot of time to do much more than have an incredible time together because she was working around her husband. They wanted to go deeper into their shared interests since they knew they existed, but she was aware that Anand desired more time with her, but she also understood that this was unlikely to occur unless her husband had to make an occasional trip out of town. She concluded that being loved by two gorgeous men was a fantastic problem. When Bryce learned about Vera's issue a few months later, he was less optimistic. Instead of getting up to get his own laptop from the home office one evening when he was alone because Vera was supposed to be working late, he grabbed his wife's iPad from the table next to his lazy boy. He saw two addresses in the delivery to column when he signed into Amazon Prime to place multiple book orders. Vera's boss, Anand Patel, had a second address, which wasn't his usual one, but the first was England's home address. Bryce glanced at the second address, and his eyes grew quite big. His first reaction was a horrible feeling in the pit of his stomach, but it soon turned into wrath. He cried out to the four walls enclosing his body. Then he walked to his bar, drank a double of his single malt scotch, and began to arrange things. What was most troubling for Bryce was that, until a few minutes earlier, he would have assured everyone and everybody that he loved his wife more than anything, even in the face of what seemed to be her betrayal. He would have to face his response and decide if they could continue as a married pair if it turned out that she was in fact cheating. After an hour or so, Vera arrived home and hummed as she opened the door. He didn't leap from his seat to give her a warm kiss to greet her for the first time that Bryce could recall. Vera too wasn't spared it. She approached Bryce on his lazy boy while he was sitting and reading the sports section of the newspaper. "Hey, hon, everything okay?" she inquired. "Not even close," Bryce murmured, cocking his head to receive Vera's kiss on his cheek instead of his lips. Vera stepped back, observing her husband intently. She worried for the first time if he had somehow learned of her affair. Seeing the glance from the corner of his eye, Bryce knew he had to hold off on making plans until he could think them through. He was not the type to make snap decisions. Feeling a little self-conscious at the moment, Vera decided that tact was preferable to bravery and refrained from continuing the conversation. She mentally noted that she should be more aware of her husband's emotional state. Perhaps she had been a little too easy on him. Bryce made a call to his good friend, an attorney, the following day at work. Following Bryce's explanation of the situation, the friend contacted and enlisted the help of his finest investigator. Bryce received photographic and video evidence of his wife's treachery 2 weeks later. His companion said, "So what now, amigo?" Bryce cried freely for the first time since his parents' passing in an automobile accident 5 years prior. Vera made an effort to be discreet, but after that one night, she kept a close eye on her husband for the following few days. She was certain that Bryce lacked any cunning, and she believed she would instantly learn if he discovered she was having an affair. In Vera's own mind, she even termed it an affair. Even while she knew it wasn't right, she was having no trouble persuading herself of its error, especially because she wasn't failing Bryce in any kind. Vera had been observing her husband for several days, and the only area where she noticed a difference was in the bedroom. Normally, Bryce would start things off just as frequently as she did, but over the next week, he made no effort to get close. After a few days, when she finally did, he first appeared hesitant before becoming the most physical person he had ever been, pushing her into the mattress that evening. The only way Bryce could release his mounting resentment of his wife's infidelity was through his newly discovered physicality in the bedroom. He was no longer looking to Vera for anything. That's when Bryce handed his wife over. After Bryce turned in, Vera fell into a tired sleep. Her final half-thought was that with her 2 studs, she was the luckiest woman alive. Even though it wouldn't matter financially in the no-fault state, Bryce had given his attorney instructions to draft divorce papers for infidelity. Given that their incomes were comparable and they were childless, the divorce from his wife would be reasonably equitable. They would have to split the proceeds from the sale of the residence. "I know this sounds crazy, but just hold the papers until I tell you," Bryce explained. "I'm going to let this play out a while longer, and maybe she will come to her senses. I love the stupid bitch, and maybe with some counseling." John Jefferson questioned, "Are you going to confront her at least? That would probably end this thing quicker." "Probably not. You know how headstrong Vera can be. If I have to step in, she's just going to dig her heels in deeper. This has to come from her, and then maybe we'll have a chance. You're the boss. You say when. Those papers will keep as long as Twinkies." A year later, Bryce was still in disbelief that his ostensibly intelligent wife had failed to perceive the chasm that had grown between them. The few glances and touches between them had vanished. When they were together, it was only for the sake of sleeping together. Bryce saw that the two hadn't made love since he discovered the adultery, even if Vera might not have known. Their intimacy had decreased to just once a week. The fact that Vera had maintained the appearance of being a faithful wife astounded him as well. She appeared to have maintained a successful career, a continuing relationship, and a full schedule of social events and hobbies. Every time he thought about it, he had to admit that keeping all those items in the air was rather astounding. Things would have continued much longer if Bryce hadn't been reluctant to end his marriage, but destiny stepped in and gave Anand a career raise. In the company's London branch, he was elevated to a director-level position and given a 1-month notice period before departing. Vera was happy for her beloved on a professional level, but she was grieved by this turn of events. Maybe this is the God's way of telling us it's time to end our relationship, Anand added. We've been doing this for 3 years now and haven't gotten caught. I'd say we've been very good at hiding it, and maybe a little lucky. Over the next 2 weeks, Vera and Anand both shed many tears. Sometimes it appeared like Vera was distracted, Bryce thought to himself. He pondered whether her connection with Anand or her job was the source of the issue. Baby, is there something going on? He said. Though it appeared as though she might speak, Vera waited and walked out of the room. There was conflict in paradise, Bryce surmised to himself, between the couples. He grinned. The location of her husband's new job as well as the promotion made Lisa Patel very happy. She had family in London, where she had grown up. 1 week before Anand was due to depart, she took responsibility of packing up her family's belongings and returning to London with them, her 2 kids, and herself. That left the lovers with 1 week before Anand was due to leave New York for London. Vera thought the plan made sense, but Anand wasn't sure. Before Anand's Monday morning flight to London, she will travel to New York on Friday and spend the entire weekend with him. Before bidding farewell for the last time, the couple could see various sights, perform a Broadway show, and eat at fancy restaurants. The sole disadvantage to the arrangement was Vera's intention to inform her spouse that she would be spending the final weekend with Anand. Why would you tell him, Vera? Asked Anand. Just tell him it's a business trip. He'd never know. How many business trips have I taken in my years here? None. And I suddenly have to take one over a weekend. Bryce may be trusting, but that seems far-fetched. If I lie and get caught, Bryce and I are done. But if I tell him the truth and appeal to his love for me, I really think we can get past this. It might hurt him for a bit, but he loves me totally, and he's the most rational guy I know. It makes more sense to tell him, she explained. If that's what you think is right. You know him best, Anand said. Vera held off on telling her husband the truth until the evening before she was scheduled to go for New York. Vera tucked into Bryce on the couch after eating and cleaned the table. Bryce did not retreat, as had been his pattern over the past 2 years or so, but he also did not cuddle back. The television he was viewing seems to have captured his attention. After a short while, Vera cleared her throat. I need to take a trip this weekend, Bryce, she began. She remained silent until her spouse gradually admitted that he had heard her. He was simply staring at her. She outlined the weekend's schedule, starting with Anand's promotion, but she never acknowledged their continued relationship. After this weekend, he will be gone forever, and we won't see each other again. We just need to make the connection at last because we have these sentiments for one another. We believe that this is a wonderful way to conclude things as we've been carrying these feelings for a number of years, Vera stated. Then I'll be here and he'll be in London, and I'll spend the rest of our lives making this right for you. We're not going to text. We will not speak over the phone. Nothing. It will conclude and be resolved. This was a surprise announcement to Bryce. He hardly refrained from speaking, particularly when she flatly claimed that they had never engaged in any physical activity. You've had a good wife in me. I've never withheld anything from you, and you were never aware of our relationship, Vera stated. Bryce opened his mouth to argue, but nothing came out. He lowered his head and mentally recited the number 10. He was unsure about how much information to divulge. Bryce remarked, You can't do this, Vera. It doesn't matter why you think that. Is Lisa aware of this? You don't get to change the rules for a weekend of sleeping with another man. We took vows. If she does, I doubt she will be any more delighted than I am. Is she even aware of it? Vera's face turned red. I'm not sure if Anand has informed Lisa. She has returned to London already. Observe, Bryce. Actually, I'm not asking for your permission to do this. Regardless of your response, this is what I'm going to do. When I get back, we can discuss this in greater detail, she stated. That must be the reason you put it off telling me until the very last minute. You were asking for forgiveness, not permission. You know that whenever we argue, you always give in to me, baby. You'll understand eventually that this won't harm us and you'll give it to me, or you'll forgive me afterwards, she remarked. Not at this moment, Bryce stated. This is the straw that breaks the camel's back. You get on that plane, we are done. To Vera, Bryce's final remark felt like a spiked glove. She didn't pay attention to Bryce's remark that this was the last straw. Although Bryce considered sleeping in the guest room, he ultimately made up his mind not to let his wife to force him from his bed. Vera went to bed, but he was already asleep. Bryce rose an hour or so sooner than normal. he discovered Vera's little luggage prepared to go on the bed in the guest room before he left. When he arrived home a little after 5 p.m., it wasn't there. His response when he got his lawyer on the phone was simple: go. At precisely 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the taxi to the airport arrived at the hotel. Before the couple shared a heartfelt farewell kiss, Anand carried Vera's bag to the car and placed it in the back seat. However, the kiss was cut short when an impolite man touched Vera's shoulder. The man would have none of it as the two tried to disregard the nuisance. England, Vera? He asked. Are you Vera England? They both let out a disgusted sigh as they broke their connection. Vera yelled, Yes, Mrs. England, you have been served, the man stated, pressing a manila packet into her hand. It was soon forgotten that they had hugged. Vera's eyes filled with tears. Anand furiously tore open the envelope she gave him. Sub, said Anand. I believed you to have stated that he was a sensible man, considerate man, or anything. You claimed there wouldn't be a problem with this. To serve you this quickly, he had to work really quickly. Vera was crying so much that she was unable to think clearly. The flight home was going to be somewhat lengthy. Not that she was shocked that Bryce failed to meet her at the airport. She rode an Uber back to her house. Bryce had a cup of coffee and was seated at the kitchen table. At Vera's place was a second cup. She sat down, tears welling up in her eyes as she received the hint. Vera, please stop playing with water. It's me who ought to be crying. It's me who's been duped, Bryce remarked. Vera looked up at what Bryce had said. Her blood pressure was through the roof, yet the weeping ceased right away. It wasn't dishonest. She said, I told you what I was going to do. Have I truly accepted your plan? No, I didn't. You cheated as a result. In this instance, alter the rules. You don't get to make the rules, Bryce remarked. It was one weekend out of our entire married lives, she added. Out of thousands thus far, with many thousands more to come, we are at day 2.5. Are you really that interested in divorcing over that? I don't, in fact. Bryce looked his wife in the eyes and stated, I think I might have been able to come to terms with this, if it had just been this. Bryce witnessed his wife break for the first time. She was only beginning to mentally calculate the answers. Do you really think I'm that stupid? You two had done this quite a few times before. Although this was your first weekend together, as far as I can tell, you two had been sleeping together for more than 2 years. However, I must give you credit. You have been leading 2 separate lives for a minimum of 2 years. Perfect partner and adulterous woman. I hung on, thinking you would get smart and give him up, but your weekend out of time crossed the line. Despite being seated, Vera experienced dizziness. In an attempt to collect herself, she took a drink of her coffee. Why did you remain silent until now? With hardly more than a whisper, she questioned, why didn't you try to stop me? When I found out, it had already been going on for a while. Since you love me and it was wrong, I was expecting you would stop. Foolish me, he murmured. She exclaimed, but I do love you. I still adore you just the same. But I also adore him. I am capable of loving you both. But you're my husband. You've held the top spot always. No, no, no. There's not a top ranking. That's because a number 2, 3, or 4 shouldn't exist, he remarked. Well, only you right now. Anand is by yourself. Now that he's gone, it's just the 2 of us, Vera remarked. Now that it's just you, okay. I'm no longer included in this equation, sweetie. Bryce, hurry up. He is no longer there. Vera stated, there's no justification for a divorce. If he hadn't left, would you have stopped messing him up? Stated Bryce. Vera closed her eyes. She was not required to respond. What made you believe you could have some fun with him? How did this begin? He inquired. Her words were cut off by Bryce. You know Anand and like him. Enjoyed, he stated. All right, I understand. But he's a terrific guy, and I think he's the best man I know, at least next to you. And that was just now. Bryce growled, and happened, his wife looking disgusted. We started to feel genuine affection for one another. It was more than just free time. You understand that I could never simply spend cheap time with someone. I adore you both, Vera declared. Babe, that's not how it operates. You can't love both of us, Bryce remarked. Have I ever done anything to offend you? Have I ever refused to have fun with you? She inquired. Yes, you did give him something that you said was exclusively going to belong to me. We vowed to each other. Babe, it's about so much more than just having fun. Have faith. With respect. I would just be waiting for you to get someone else in Anand's place now that he's gone, Bryce said. It's obvious that you don't respect me enough not to let something happen. I don't think I'll ever fall in love with a third man. I've found 2 terrific loves, but most people are blessed to find only one. Vera remarked, I've already exceeded my lifetime catch limit. Are you still not understanding it? An apology is the one thing I haven't heard from you, he remarked. Pardon me for hurting you. I didn't intend to do that. But I was unable to tell you outright because he cut you off, saying, because you knew it was wrong. You're not sorry for the affair, are you? Bryce went on. Honestly, I'm not, Bryce. Vera stated. I cherish Anand. I cherished our time spent together, having 2 men to adore and who love me back, as I mentioned earlier. No, I wouldn't swap that. Bryce gave a bewildered shake of his head. He anticipated regret and shame. He was shocked to learn that he had both. He said, what about Lisa? She didn't know about this affair, did she? Did you not? Oh no, Vera stated. Avoid. Don't tell me that you told her, please. She was unaware. Oh my God, she's going to hate me. Yes, regarding that, Bryce replied. Why did you tell her? Vera inquired. She didn't have to know. She had to be aware. We were both his and her friends. You wouldn't hide secrets from your pals. Since this was such a pure love, it's almost like a love tale for the ages, so why shouldn't she know? Vera clenched her fists, exasperated. She gave her spouse a scowl. You're giving off a tacky, cheap vibe with this. That wasn't how it was, she squealed. I'll bet Lisa disagrees with you, as you know I do, he said. Bryce, they have the 2 children. You'll completely ruin their family, she uttered. Only if Lisa shares my perspective on things. You should be good to go if she shares her opinion. However, even if she were to share my opinion, I wouldn't destroy their family. I didn't sleep with her spouse, Bryce remarked. The following day, when Vera was at work, Annan called her. Annan's wife refused to let him into the house that was meant to be his new residence in London when he turned up, presumably because Lisa hadn't had enough time to get divorce paperwork prepared. He yelled into the phone, I can't believe your husband did that to me. I thought we were friends. Yeah, well I guess he thought his friend shouldn't sleep with his wife for the past 3 years, Vera remarked. I've been attempting to clarify things for him, but he's not understanding. He's acting really harshly over this. Never before has he refused to comply with my requests. Disappointed, Annan remarked, I guess this is a little bigger than the color of the living room walls. Before Vera's parents called Bryce, a week had passed. His positive relationship with his in-laws was strengthened after his own parents passed away in an automobile accident. His father-in-law questioned, have you considered counseling, son? You two have been together for 10 years. Were you not thinking of forming a family soon? Yeah, well I guess that's never going to happen now, Bryce answered. Oh no, my dear boy. His father-in-law remarked, don't let something little grow into something deadly. Something small, Bryce asked. It didn't take him long to realize that Vera hadn't exactly been honest with her parents. He was aware that the remainder of the conversation would not be simple. She mentioned there was a disagreement between the two of you. His father-in-law remarked, she didn't seem to indicate it was anything vital. Her continued involvement with her old boss was the point of contention between us. Were you aware that they had been having sexual relations for over 2 years? The person on the other end of the phone gasped, Ralph Carville. When a father learns that his daughter girl is being cheated on by a woman, he is shocked. Then Bryce heard him question his wife about knowing that their daughter was having an affair. Though he heard her stutter, he didn't hear back. Got him you, Faith. He is related. He heard Ralph ask his wife, how could you do that to him? For what duration are you aware? Shit, lady. Ralph, ever the obstinate, returned to the line. Bryce, I apologize. It seems that my wife and daughter have been hiding things from us both, which I was unaware of. I am aware that I did not raise her to be a disloyal lady, a long-term affair, and she believed you would comply with that. I raised this entitled woman, damn it. I apologize once more, Bryce. Dad, we all are. Good night. Vera resisted the divorce, which shocked Bryce. When Vera's lawyer recommended marriage counseling and the court chuckled, it was all over. Mr. Liston, really. I know full well that Mrs. England had an extended liaison with her supervisor at the time. I have to believe that was not Mr. England's intention. After all that, only a stupid person would accept that, to be honest. 6 months later the divorce was finalized. Hank the dog was the only point of dispute in the breakup. Vera insisted on taking the dog with her even though Bryce had given it to her as a gift, even though Bryce had anticipated the dog would travel with him. Bryce had eventually given in, but Hank had hopped into Bryce's car as he was leaving the house. After calling the large dog several times, Vera lifted it out and watched as it sprang back in. Vera said, keep the damn dog, you jerk. This, Bryce thought to himself, was the first time he had ever heard Vera say anything disparaging. My comment, nowhere near enough pain or humiliation for the wife. She never once apologized for what she had done, let alone come to the realization that she had indeed been wrong. She should have had to leave with grief and remorse for the rest of her life. On the other hand, allowing the affair to continue for such a long time, simply hoping that that wife would see the light and end it, was incredibly crazy. Yeah, I get that he loved his wife, but after no sign of a let-up, he should have filed for the divorce much, much sooner.